This episode of the Jim Stroud Podcast is brought to you by the Recruiting Life newsletter. If you want to keep up with what's happening now and next in the world of work, subscribe to the Recruiting Life over at my website at newsletter.jimstroud.com. That's newsletter.jimstroud.com. There is a lot of concern about AI taking our jobs away, and that's a very, very valid concern, but not the most dreaded thing you should be concerned about as a job seeker, actually. I'll be so bold as to say this. The robot isn't coming for your job, but the spreadsheet is. This one is... This little monologue is going to be interesting. Maybe the most controversial thing you can say about artificial intelligence right now is this. The robot may not be coming for your job because the robot is too expensive. That sounds comforting for about 5 seconds. Then the punchline lands. If your job is safe only because the machine is too expensive, that is not security. That's, I don't know, a temporary pricing error. We've been sold two childish stories about AI and work. Silicon Valley tells the fairy tale. AI will make everyone creative, productive, and liberated, and somehow nobody important will get hurt. The naysayers say, well, they tell a more apocalyptic story. AI will replace the entire workforce by Tuesday. Both stories are too, clean, too far-fetched, maybe that's the right phrase. The real threat is not a chrome humanoid robot kicking down the office door. The real threat is a finance team staring at a spreadsheet and asking, if 10 people with AI can do what 15 people used to do, then why are we still paying 15 people? That's the question. Not whether AI has a soul, not whether it writes poetry. The question is whether AI becomes cheap enough, reliable enough, and politically convenient enough for employers to use it to weaken labor. Here's the part the hype merchants hate. In many cases, AI is not cheaper than human beings yet. It is not magic labor. It is metered infrastructure. Every prompt has a cost. Every retry has a cost. Every hallucination, compliance review, security failure, integration problem, and human supervisor cleaning up the mess has a cost. Axios reported that some companies are already discovering this, including a very blunt quote from NVIDIA's Vice President Brian Catanzaro. Am I saying his name right? Catanzaro. Forgive me, Mr. Brian, if I'm saying your name wrong. But let me check my notes here. What did you say? You said this. For my team, the cost of compute is far beyond the cost of the employees. Now, that is not from an anti-AI activist by any stretch. That is coming from inside the proverbial church of AI. And Axios reported it in context of AI compute costs sometimes exceed labor costs. A human salary is expensive, but a human salary is predictable. Agentic AI can behave like an uncapped utility bill. Gartner warned that agentic models can require 5 to 30 times more tokens per task than an ordinary chatbot use, because agents plan, they call tools, they check work, they retry and generate long chains of invisible computation. Gartner also projected inference costs could fall sharply by 2030, but warned that total costs can still rise if usage explodes faster than units prices fall. Gartner's forecast makes the contradiction clear. Cheaper tokens do not automatically mean cheaper AI operations. Now, in case you're curious and want to read the report yourself, I'll link to it in the podcast description, along with a link to this next research report I want to quote here, which says, Goldman Sachs. So Goldman Sachs research, they made the same point that Gartner research did. They forecasted that AI agents could drive a 24-fold increase in token consumption by 2030. Goldman's analysis shows how agentic AI can turn one request into a storm of computation. So yes, if AI is more expensive than hiring a human being, people should feel less anxious about one nightmare, which is the idea that every company in the world will immediately fire everyone else because software is cheaper. That version of reality is just nonsensical, to put it politely. Companies are not charities, but they are also not allergic to arithmetic, right? If the machine costs more than the worker, breaks more often than the worker, and requires another worker to supervise it, then replacing the worker is not innovation. It's expensive cosplay. But I got to say this to the American worker, and to every worker out there for that matter: do not get comfortable. Today's AI may look expensive, but tomorrow's AI may not. Stanford's 2025, is it 2025? Yeah. Stanford's 2025 AI index found that the cost of running AI at about GPT 3.5 level fell more than 280 times between late 2022 and late 2024. Epoch AI found the same basic pattern. The price of using large language models is falling fast, even if the drop is uneven. And that matters, ladies and gentlemen, because a lot of people are still comforting themselves with one thought: AI is too expensive to replace me. Well, that may be true today, but cost curves do not care about your comfort, unfortunately. If your job security plan is built on the price of GPUs staying high forever, you do not have a plan. You have a wish, and it's aimed at a supply chain. I'm so cynical. AI does not have to replace your whole job to weaken your position. That's the mistake almost everyone is making nowadays, I think. They're asking, can AI do my job? And that's really the wrong question, right? The better question is, can AI do enough of my job that my employer needs fewer people like me? That's where the knife goes in quietly in your gut. AI does not need to be a full accountant to reduce accounting headcount. It doesn't need to be a full lawyer to reduce junior legal work. It doesn't need to be a full software engineer to change how many engineers get hired. It doesn't need to be a full customer support agent to raise the number of tickets one human is expected to handle. The labor market moves when tasks are compressed. When entry-level work disappears, when one person is expected to do the work of two, and when management discovers that AI assistance is a polite phrase for "we raise your quota." The National Bureau of Economic Research studied 5,179 customer support agents and found that generative AI assistants raise productivity by 14% on average, with the biggest gains among novice and lower skilled workers. Then there's this study here by check my notes there. Yeah, NBER. I forget what it stands for. Forgive me. I'll link to it in the podcast description. But their study called, I can read my writing. Their study is called Generative AI at Work. It's often treated as an augmentation success story. That's the name of the study. Generative AI at Work. And What have I else here? Yeah, generative AI work is often treated as an augmentation success story. Yeah, that's the name of the study. And to their point, it can be. It can be if the worker gets paid more, learns faster, and gains leverage, then wonderful, right? Wonderful. But if the company simply says, great, now everyone can handle more tickets because we have AI to augment your work, well, then the augmentation becomes a quota increase. A quota increase with better PR. I'm so cynical. Well, that's the word people hide behind augmentation, right? Now, I read this from, where did I read this from? The International Labor Organization, right? So they argued that generative AI is more likely to augment jobs than destroy them outright because most occupations are only partly exposed to automation, right? And I read that the ILO's research pushed back against the simplistic view, their words, not mine, that mass unemployment is going to happen, and thus the entire world needs to panic. But, to their point, augmentation is not automatically worker friendly. A faster worker is not necessarily a freer worker, right? A more productive worker is not necessarily a better paid worker. And a worker surrounded by AI tools may be empowered, or they may be monitored, accelerated, and squeezed to get as much production out of them as possible. The OECD, that's the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. That's an international group of mostly high-income democratic countries that studies economics and social policy, stuff like that, right? They identified costs as a major barrier to AI adoption, which supports the idea that expensive AI slows replacement. But the same OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, their analysis notes that firms adopt AI to improve productivity and reduce staff costs, which means that their employment outlook makes clear that the cost slows adoption of AI, right? So because AI is expensive, companies are a little bit slower to adopt it. But even so, that doesn't remove the incentive to reduce labor costs, right? So there's that double-edged swords. And it's a double-edged sword because employers are not hiding their intentions, right? The World Economic Forum, they did a report called the Future of Jobs Report 2025. They say job disruption could affect 22% of jobs by 2030, with 170 million, that number, 170 million roles created and 92 million displaced. It also reports that 77% of employers plan to upskill workers in response to AI, while 41% plan to reduce their workforce, where AI can automate tasks. The World Economics Forum Employer Survey captures a dual reality where two things can be right at the same time. Companies are retraining workers in the face of AI while also reducing their workforces because of AI, all at the same time. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's the PowerPoint. So, should people feel less anxious that AI is so expensive that companies can't replace workers right away? I'm gonna say yes. People should feel less anxious, but only if this anxiety is based on science fiction. I hate to say it, but you should be a little anxious, right? You should be anxious based on what's the best way to say this? Based on business history, right? Because business history says that when a tool raises output, the gains do not automatically flow to the worker. The difference is not the tool. The difference is power, bargaining power, legal power, institutional power, and the power to say, if this technology makes me more productive, I should share in the upside. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, let me explain who they are. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, they're a global financial institution, and they study economic risk, they advise governments, and they monitor trends that affect the world economy, right? That's who they are. Now, the IMF, they warned that AI can make inequality really, 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 really bad. Actually make it much worse than what it is. Not because AI eliminates every job, but because it may help high-income workers more than everyone else. It may also increase the rewards going to owners, investors, and companies that control the technology. Translation to that, AI may not destroy work. It may just rearrange who gets paid from it. And that's the real fight. That's the real controversy, in my opinion. The future may not be jobless. It may be worse than that. It may be boring. Plenty of jobs, but less leverage for workers. Plenty of productivity, but less security for workers. Plenty of new tools, but fewer paths into stable careers for the worker. Sense a pattern here? This matters more, I think, for entry-level workers, right? Junior employees do the messy work that teaches them the job. They draft, they summarize, they research, they, clean data, answer basic customer tickets, write first pass code, make mistakes, get corrected, try again. That is how they become senior, doing stuff like that. So if companies automate the bottom rungs of the career ladder, they shouldn't act surprised 10 years later when nobody knows how to climb. Here's something really, really honest, brutally honest. AI being more expensive than humans should not make humans relax. It should make you stop worrying about the cartoon version of the future, but also it should make you start paying attention to the real negotiation. Don't just ask, will AI take my job? Ask better questions. Questions like, which parts of my job are being turned into software, right? Who owns the productivity gains? Will AI reduce drudgery, or will it just raise the working quotas? Will new workers get trained? Will companies use the savings to raise wages, lower prices, hire more people, or buy back stock? That is where the future of work really gets decided. Not by whether AI can pass an exam or whether it can write a sonnet, not even whether or not it can pretend to have a soul. The future of work will be decided in procurement meetings, budget reviews, performance dashboards, headcount plans. And in that regard, be less afraid of the killer robot and be more afraid of the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet does not need to hate you. It does not need to be conscious. It only needs one cell that says, same output, fewer workers. And when that cell turns green in the spreadsheet, the revolution will not look like a giant robot uprising. Instead, it will look like a hiring freeze.
You have been listening to the Jim Stroud Podcast, a proud member of the Purple Acorn Network. If you like what you heard, hate what you heard, or don't know what you just heard, I want to know about it. Email your questions and comments to podcast@jimstroud.com. That's podcast@jimstroud.com. Do it now. Operators are standing by. Well, that's it for now. I'll be back later, right here, with a brand new episode. So until then, bye-bye.